I'm sure you've heard this from every single one of us. It was initially called The Secret, the script that we got. And so, no, we didn't. And of course, Neil always says his character's name being Axel, he had a vague feeling, but we didn't know, which is fun. I mean, we were very young actors, so I think it was smart of George to keep us in the dark as much as possible. Otherwise, we could have done some junior acting and maybe let on that we kind of knew. That would have been a possibility. It's just amazing, really. I mean, Canada is a gorgeous country, and I've been across it from coast to coast, but I had not yet been to the East Coast, and very different kind of people than I'm from the West Coast. Just so eager to please and helpful and straightforward, and the vistas were beautiful. We weren't supposed to really go anywhere because, you know, for insurance purposes, they didn't really want us traipsing around the Cabot Trail or whatever, but you know, I think we saw a fair amount. If anything was going to happen to us, it would have happened in the mine, not while we were hiking through the leaves. It was fall. It was gorgeous. And as far as, like, you've probably heard this story before too, but it exemplifies the kind of people that were on board. Is that, yeah, you know, George and his team went to do location scouting, found the perfect situations, laundromats, you know, mines, whatever, and as they were somewhat run down, so they were perfect for what George wanted. And then he came back to continue working on the script in Montreal, and then when they got there to film, the town had, not single-handedly, I think, I'm sure everybody was involved in repainting, refreshening, re-cleaning. You know, they were so proud to have us there. Well, the first thing that I remember is how peculiar it is to go into the mine when it's still dark outside, because we start early mornings, and then be down there for long days of filming and come up and it would still be dark. And again, and it occurred to me that that was the life of those miners for days on end. I mean, I don't know if they got one day off a week or whatever, but you can go days without actually seeing daylight, which is strange. I think that the safety concerns we were well protected from if they were there, but plus youth, you know, you just kind of go, I takes my chances, and you know, you don't go down there shooting your, you know, first feature film and go, I might die from a gas leak. You're more focused on, you know, what you're doing, and but it was very time consuming for production because we had to take an elevator shaft down, and I don't know, it might have been 60 of us down there at a time, and you could only get so many in the elevator, so any kind of break or getting the entire cast down or up, I think George will tell you, but I think it was about an hour and a half or 45 minutes, an hour and a half total, but that would be tacked on to a half-hour lunch or a break or something. So it was very complicated there. And I didn't know a lot about lighting and stuff at that point. I was a theater actor. So I didn't realize how challenging it was for them. They had to completely come up with a different set of tools to light because the regular bulbs that they would use in the film were going to be too hot and too dangerous for the whatever gas levels were down there. Other than that, I mean, it was an imposing but sort of fascinating environment. Oh yeah, it was at the beginning of the film, and it was like, I think it might have been my first day or something, and just also meeting Paul and working with him, where there was a little bit of it in there, but when he comes in and sort of kidnaps me from my grocery store job that I've had, and I haven't seen him for a long time, and he left me, and there's hurt feelings and stuff. A little bit was in there, but I have a feeling there was a lot more that happened inside the grocery store before he sort of kidnapped me and put me in the car. But I might be imagining that, because there's still a little bit of it in there. But sometimes when I watch it, I kind of go, I remember something else. and I'm, It may have been because of poor performances, because I remember when I look at the very beginning of the film, I can see my self-consciousness, you know, as a new actress to camera. I can feel it and see it a little bit, but by the time we got down into the mine, because there was so much action. Action is always great in a film because it just moves you into doing things. And once you're doing things, you're more natural. If you're just sitting there having a lot of dialogue and speak, you've got time to get self-conscious. Right from the get-go, from like the auditioning process, you know, I like the fact that he trusted improvisation, and that it seemed to me that the most important thing from an actor's standpoint is that he was looking for chemistry between people, and he spent a lot of time thinking about who he was going to cast. And that's so important. You know, if the chemistry is right, half your job is done for you. George is a very powerful, strong man. He has strong ideas about what he wants, and you know, he's not afraid to bark at you at times, which just kind of kept us all in place. You know, like when you're that young, you can get kind of silly. So he made sure that we developed a sense of discipline about what we were doing. I mean, plus the fact is he was the one that had created the whole project, and it was not at all the project that he thought he was going to be working on. But, you know, I just remember being so impressed because I just, maybe a year before, had seen The Deer Hunter, and that movie left a huge impression on me as a piece of filmmaking. I just thought it was brilliant. And, you know, George said, you know, we might be making a slasher film or a horror film or a schlock film, but let's make it the Deer Hunter of that genre. And again, that's what you want. There's no point in going into a project going, well, it's just this, you know, so I'll give it, you know, this amount of energy or enthusiasm. I'll turn down jobs if that's the way I feel about it. It's not fair to anybody. And George was committed, and you know, he put together a very strong crew and an amazing cast. And to his testament, you know, we're still all very close friends. That's thanks to George. Well, it was harder for me because I was in theatre school at the time. I was going to the National Theatre School of Canada. And originally I turned down the film because I was completely intent upon being a theatre actor. And they had said that, that we weren't allowed to work professionally during a 3-year training program. And the film was going to overlap. It would start at the end of my summer break, but it was going to overlap with going back for second year. So I just turned it down flat out right. And again, when you ask about George, George was not prepared to accept no for an answer and said, let me go to your board of directors at your school and let me pitch this idea, you know, and you might be a little late to get back for your second year. But anyway, so he made it happen. So, but what that meant was I did have to start the second year, and I got there about a week or 10 days later, maybe a week, than all the other castmates. And so they had already had a chance to become friends. So I kind of arrived feeling a bit sort of sheepish and like the outsider, and like maybe I had a bit of special treatment. It was for reasons that they didn't know at the time. But they were pretty welcoming. You know, it took me an extra day or two. And then on top of that, I had a back injury, so they almost had to release me from my contract. It just kicked in when I arrived there. So again, they were all frolicking about and rehearsing and having fun, and I was like bedridden for a couple of days while they decided if they were going to fly me back to Toronto or fly a chiropractor in, or what they were going to do. So it all worked out like in a very short order. It's much easier to make friendships like that when you're younger, don't you think? I don't know if it was a boom just for horror films. It was just a film boom. There were lots of kind of ribald teenage comedies, you know, like Meatballs and Gas and that sort of thing. I mean, it all had to do with the tax credit structure, and there was money there and investments to be made, and but I guess maybe because we were fairly new to filmmaking, maybe they went for the most obvious genres. I don't really know because I wasn't in a position of being a filmmaker myself, but I think like to get a slow-moving, character-driven film might not have been as easy of a sell as selling, like I say, ribald romantic, teen comedies or horror films. I mean, there were a number of them, but I wonder proportionately if they were that much more. I mean, I recall, well, I was a special business extra on Happy Birthday to Me, which is how I sort of met the casting person and how I ended up auditioning for My Bloody Valentine. There was Happy Birthday to Me, and there was Prom Night After Us. Another handful, but I don't think there was. It probably just seems like there was a plethora of them then. Absolutely. We're always stunned. We're stunned. And when we go to the conventions or whatever, like it's just unbelievable how passionate the fans are. I mean, I love filmmaking. It's my business. But no matter who the actor is, I can't really see myself, going somewhere to meet the person, or to get an autograph or to write a fan letter. So it's extremely flattering. And the fans, that they're very loyal too. And I don't even know if they see it as a cult film that they're allowed to enjoy so much, like as to laugh at. I encourage people to laugh at it and enjoy it, because it's special effects nowadays. You can't compare what we were working with and the way they were doing things. And Steadicam is a very successful tool for building tension. You don't always need green screen and all that extra CGI and stuff like that. So yeah, I was surprised. I did not see the remake. And by successful, the only way I would know if it was successful or not, I guess, would be based on the box office, which I don't know anything about. The comments that I heard were that it sort of moved into the horror and the blood and guts really swiftly. And I think the difference is, and this is again because of George, with the original, the script and George took time to set up all the characters and who they were and what their relationships were to each other and to the town and all of that. Who is the mayor and who's the son of the guy that owns the mine, and who works where, and so I think that people, one of the reasons that we have such a strong fan base is that people really feel like they got to know those characters before they were being hacked to pieces. Gosh, I don't know. It would have been something so different than the mine, because he and his father had a kind of a highly conflicting, male ego driven relationship. So he probably tried something completely different than that. He had a fair amount of sensitivity underneath the initial way that you met him. I mean, and you see that in The Bluffs. It takes a lot for a man to say to a woman, I screwed up, and so maybe it was something more artistic. We're all too young to have lost two castmates, and both of them, it turned out to be brain cancer. Alfie was the most generous soul. Like, the running joke is, so I'll give you the punchline and then I'll give you the backstory. Jim Richardson, who was in the film, always goes, well, who didn't sleep with Alfie? That's the punchline. But it's because most of us were living in Montreal at the time. And Alfie and Keith Knight were both living in Toronto. Maybe Cynthia Dale as well. And we all realized in short order that there wasn't going to be a lot of work in Montreal because most of us didn't speak French. And where the film boom was happening in that moment, that nanosecond, was in Toronto. Of course, Quebec now makes a zillion fabulous films. But so Toronto was the natural next step, next place to go. And Alfie hosted every single one of us. And doing things like apologizing because he didn't have bubble bath, and running a bath and putting shampoo in it so at least there'd be something frothy, and and although several of us girls did sleep in the same bed with him because that's the only bed he had, perfect gentleman, absolutely perfect gentleman. And he and Keith both introduced us to our first agent, which was Penny Noble at Noble Talent Management, fantastic agent, and she now, it's called Noble Kaplan Abrams, but he brought us in and blew our horn and, basically paved the way. And nowadays, for an actor to get an agent, it's so tough. And we basically, on the basis that, no, of course, it was a good basis, like somebody could watch you in a whole film. I mean, I was the lead. There was a lot of screen time for them to look at. But still, it was such a gift to have somebody just host you in the door like that. And that was Alfie. And Alfie, all Alfie ever really wanted to do was just make people happy and make them laugh. Absolutely, and like I'm saying to George, he's got a very strong concept for the script. And the last convention that we got together, we all listened avidly, to see how we were going to play into it. And it would be, with us, the ages that we are now, with our children and what issues they're experiencing. And it would still be in that same town, and it would involve the mine. But just in much more current ways. I think it's a great idea. I have no idea what the market would be for it. I really don't know, but considering the number of loyal fans that I've met, there should be a few tickets that would get sold. We'd all go, but he's got to start working on it. I'm still in the business, I'm still working, I'm still doing things. I'm more working sort of in Hallmark kind of venues and Christmas movies and stuff, which is a wonderful thing because that makes a lot of people very, very happy too. But I'm all for diversity for an actor, and going back to a horror film would be just so much fun, and with the same people, I mean, even better. And I will just be grateful to George forever for fighting for me. And this year he just won a Lifetime Achievement Award with the Directors Guild. So, yay, George! I just love everybody that was involved, and just a great first experience, and literally changed my life because, like I said, I was bound and determined to be a theater actor, and I really wanted to work at Shaw or Stratford, and it just changed the whole trajectory of my life. So